Welcome to Leadership Unlocked, where we uncover the pivotal stories that shape extraordinary leaders. I'm Dusty Holcomb, and on this show, we don't just talk about leadership, we decode it. In every episode, we sit down with the change makers who have walked through fire, who challenged the status quo, and emerged with wisdom worth sharing. These aren't just lessons, they're lived experiences, real moments that reveal the mindset, the resilience, and the clarity behind creating lasting impact. Today, you will hear one of those stories. Alex Goldfayn built a $10 million solo consulting practice for one reason. He had to feed his family. After being flat broke more than once, he created Outgrow to sell his way out. Today, more than 500 companies use his simple, repeatable system to add 15 to 30% revenue every year, no matter the market. If you've ever wished you could stop worrying about sales and finally grow on purpose, this episode will show you how. And oh, by the way, it's not rocket science. It's just good, positive psychology. Let's get into it. This is Leadership Unlocked. Alex, I am so excited to sit down with you and talk what I know is going to be an amazing conversation about sales and revenue growth and kind of some of your philosophies. But I want to start with this question because I've been chewing on this since the first time I ever talked to you. Does growing revenue in an organization have to suck the life out of the human beings responsible for sales?
No, it should not suck the life out of the sellers or the managers or the leaders. And if it does, probably they're not doing it right. Look, selling is helping. And one of the things we do in Outgrow is we reframe the seller's mindset on what they're doing. And I frequently find myself in front of workshops of inside salespeople, outside salespeople, customer service people, just everybody who faces customers are the people who do the Outgrow work at your company. And we ask them to swing the bat, which means we ask them to make some proactive calls, follow up on quotes, ask for referrals, that kind of business growing thing. And I'm constantly saying to them, you are not selling, you are helping. And not only are you helping, you're helping people who simply want to be helped. The starting position is customers simply want to be helped. And you help them in amazing ways. You who are listening to this or watching this right now, they actually want more of your help, more of your help, because the competition isn't as good as you. And nobody wants four guys when they can just do it with their guy, which is you. It should feel good. It should feel warm and fuzzy and happy and optimistic and positive and joyful because you're helping people who need help. And that's kind of our starting position with Outgrow proactivity, Dusty.
Well, as a person who has run companies, like what you just shared is music to my ears when we start thinking about helping customers. If we're not selling anyone to anything, we're helping them grow their business. And we do it in a way by offering value-added services. And, I'm thinking of like what I want is my business to grow. And if we can shift our people to switch the mindset from doing something to someone to doing something for someone, it's why I love what you do so very, very much. And we're going to get you to unpack your story, but I love this line. And I think if our audience is listening to this can look at this and memorize this and just like maybe tattoo it on the inside of their eyeballs, selling is helping. And when we sell and we help people, we're growing our business, we're growing their business. That's the definition of win-win, right?
Yeah, there's a phrase from the olden days, as my kids would say, chopping wood warms you twice. Once when you chop it, you warm up, and then of course when you use it for firewood, you get warmed again. Well, I like to say a proactive call pays you twice. And that idea came from that chopping wood sentence. And the reason a proactive call pays you twice is the first time you have a lovely relationship conversation with somebody. Dusty, how you doing? How's your family? What are the kids doing? How's life? How's business? How was your trip, your fishing trip, right? I know you did that recently from this conversation as we sit here, you and I. And then I say to you, Dusty, what are you working on these days that I might be able to help you with? And that would be my reverse did you know question, my selling sort of pivot to the business conversation. So we catch up, we talk about family, we talk about life for like a minute. We're not talking about this for an hour or 10 minutes, just a minute or two. And then we pivot to the business and talk about the conversation, shift to the business. That's the first time it pays you. You have a nice relationship building conversation. The second time that proactive call pays you is when you pay me money and you become a customer of additional products and services that you haven't bought yet. And obviously the second payment is the money payment. So a proactive call pays you twice. It's warm and fuzzy.
So how did you land here? Like, what was the story? What was how did you develop what is such a fundamentally different mindset than doing something to people, like having to call on people just to sell and push something down their throat? What you're talking is relational, it's warm, it's helping, like it's all of these things. How did you develop this system, Alex?
I built Outgrow because I had to feed my family. You know, I've been an entrepreneur my entire life. I've never had a job. I've never had a paycheck. I don't know what that's like. I would have many times wished that I had a paycheck, but I've never had one. And so as a 20-year-old, I started my first business. And I've been in business ever since. Not the same business. They've shifted and evolved. All of that means I have failed approximately 100 million times in my life. You know, we came to this country with no money. I'm an immigrant from Ukraine. I tell that story often. So we came here with $200 of US money. Excuse me, $20 of US money. Then I've been out of money multiple times after that, being in business. You know, entrepreneurial success doesn't go like this. It's not linear. It goes like this. You know that, Dusty, you're an entrepreneur. You know, and if you're lucky, the ups and downs trend up. Multiple times in our lives, my wife and I have been all the way out of money, all the way. And I remember going to a speech, that my first big keynote speech. I do a lot of speaking now, right? But as I got to my first big association keynote, was one of those moments that we were all the way out of money. I knew I didn't have a working credit card. And when you dread something for a long time, like, and the whole trip from Chicago to Florida, which is where this talk was, I was just dreading it because I knew I couldn't get into this hotel. But so the client was paying for the hotel, but they take a credit card for incidentals when you check in at every hotel. So I go up, I get there, dreading it, walk up to the desk and they're like, we need a credit card for incidentals. And I said, okay, here's a card. And they're like, I'm sorry, sir, that one's been declined. And I was like, what? I just used it yesterday, which it didn't work. It never works. I've tried the line many times. I had 2 cards. I tried a second card, didn't work. And I now there's a line behind me. So I step off to the side and it's mortifying because people can see it, people can hear it. And I called my wife, Lisa, and I said, hun, can you find $200 somewhere to put on this card? Because that's how much they want to charge for it. And they'll refund it when I'm out of here. I said, I promise I won't drink anything out of the hotel room bar thing. And she said to me back, where do you want me to find it? We don't have it.
Wow.
We don't have it. We didn't have $200. I have been all the way out of money. And I had to sell something at that talk. Talk about pressure. I had to sell to clients in that audience to feed my family. And so Outgrow was created because I needed to sell. And since that point, I've taught the system to 425 clients myself. We have 80 Outgrow advisors. They have worked with another 150 or so. So what is that? That's 575. And it came from me needing money, basically.
I love the origin story and the need, but I also like the psychology of what you talked about at the very beginning with my provocative yet tongue-in-cheek question around, does sales have to suck? Was, if you switch your mindset to selling as helping, it doesn't suck at all. In fact, it's warm and inviting and rewarding. And you're talking about needing to feed your family, which you had to do, but at the same time, it wasn't about you, what you were creating. You got the result from doing it and creating a system that did it well, but you were still helping. So like there's a deep ethos of service in how you show up and in the entire system. So for those that are listening that are running organizations or are thinking about how do they wrestling with this challenge of how do we grow revenue, what are the markers of success for an organization that can successfully embrace an outgrow principle? I'm going to have you explain what outgrow is, this process of doing it, the type of results someone can expect. But from a psychology perspective, what has to exist in an organization for them to be able to embrace a selling is helping mindset and create the type of numbers that I know through my study that your work can do, like 30% plus annual revenue growth? What has to exist within the organization to embrace that selling is helping mindset?
Ironically or oddly, perhaps, who can do accountability with their teams, which is challenging. You know, corporate change itself is hard in general. It's hard to make change with any team of people, Dusty, and you know this. You know, you've been a CEO more than once in your life of significant sized organizations. Corporate change itself is hard to make. Corporate change with salespeople is the hardest group to try to make change with. They're independent, they're stubborn, they have to be, very, very confident, sometimes overly so. They're entrepreneurial, and many times they're not even under your roof. They're just out there in the field, right? So good luck making change with those business people. The thing that's required to make change with them and to implement the psychology of we're just helping people is a commitment to showing them that this is not just another flavor of the month for you, and that this is not just another passing fad, because they, the salespeople, have had an entire career worth of experience in seeing things come and go. And they know for a fact, because they've seen it repeatedly, dozens of times in their careers, probably, if they've been around for any amount of time. They have seen this play out. If I wait long enough, then this too shall pass. Because it always does. It always passes. And Outgrow, early on in the book, I talk about the fact that Outgrow is culture. It's not a project. Projects start and stop. Outgrow becomes how you do business in your organization permanently. And so how is that we do business as Outgrow organizations? It is confidently and optimistically and positively and enthusiastically. More practically, it is proactively. We do business proactively. We show up to our clients and customers when nothing is wrong. It's my definition of proactive is we talk to our customers when nothing is wrong because, and I'll plant the seed here and you can come back to it if you want, Dusty. The reason we have to go to them proactively is it is impossible to add additional products and services when the customer is screaming at you. When the customer is unhappy, you are in fight or flight mode, and they are in fight or flight mode. They are in staying alive mode. If the customer is screaming at you or your salesperson, it is because somebody is screaming at them also. And within the last 2 minutes before they called you, somebody was also screaming at them, their customer. And they believe it's you that screwed them up, that caused their customer to scream at them. Maybe your shipment was late. Maybe it's on back order. Maybe you sent the wrong product. Or maybe it's not your fault at all. Maybe it's all their fault, but they need somebody to blame. A neck to choke, as it were. We go to people proactively because that is the only way they can think about what else they need and what else they can buy from you. When they're in that fight or flight, staying alive mode, they can't possibly add on additional business with you because they're just trying to stop the pain of whatever is wrong. We create that helping, not selling mindset by leaders who can do accountability for proactively communicating with customers and prospects. Has to be done with accountability. It has to not go away.
I'm putting a big circle on the page. And that's why one of the reasons I was so looking forward to this conversation is what we're talking about is culture. And what we're talking about is a cultural process that happens to be one that creates incredible revenue growth opportunities, but it's culture. It is a culture of commitment to the way things are done around here, not just a flavor of the month. I was thinking that when you said it, this too shall pass. That's what every large organization, some small organizations too, have to deal with. Is like, if we just wait long enough, the boss will get another wild hair and look for another silver bullet. They'll look for another way, whether it's sales, operations, or anything else. And you were talking about curating relationships before there's a call and demand need on you. You are intentionally, proactively curating a relationship. And that's the only time that you can actually sell additional services that aren't, being called to you, like you're not order taking when you're doing that. And did I get my numbers right? What is the success number that a company who I'm going to call this embraces a culture change of serving, not selling? What are the type of numbers that companies who do this should expect if they're able to create the accountability necessary to change the culture?
Outgrow clients average 15 to 30% revenue growth annually. So, if you're a $10 million business and you hit 30%, that's 13. And then it's 16 and a half in year 2. And by year 3, you've doubled, you're 20. And we see that constantly. We see it constantly. Some clients at 50%. Some clients double in year 1 because they go, as you correctly pointed out, from being an order-taking culture, take what's incoming and say, thank you so much, right? We can't wait to hear from you again, to saying to them, I've got this order. The same person that calls you with the order. Thank you. I've got it. What else do you need? What else do you need for this project or effort or whatever they're doing? What other projects do you have coming up that I can start putting together for you? Here's a great question. These are all called reverse did you know questions in our vernacular. Great, killer question. What are you buying from my competition that I can help you with? The customer, so we know the statistics for the success rates of all of these questions that I'm demonstrating here. And so over 100 million Outgrow questions logged, tracked, and analyzed over about 25 years. We know that 80% of the time that you ask a question like that, what else do you need? What else are you buying from my competition that I can help you with? 80% of the time, the customer will tell you. Because why wouldn't they? They want to be helped more, back to the starting position. So they will always say, I buy these 12 things over there. Can you help me with those? You know why? Because they don't want to make the second call. They're happy just to do it on this call. They don't want to have to remember it later when they can just take care of it with their person who they're on the phone with now. So,
and especially important when that person has been proactive and has built a relationship. So it's just natural. It's not a person asking that question on the receipt of the order taking call. Like that's transactional. And what you're talking about is relational and it's meaningful.
Yeah.
You said something earlier, and I'm going, typically on our episodes, I will be very philosophical or relational leadership lessons. And I am finding so many leadership lessons woven through the things you're talking about around culture and accountability. But I want to get back to something you said it at the beginning of the call. It's this ability to think about sales and revenue generation as not just being a salesperson's job. You talked about customer service and, like other capacities. Talk to, like, how does that fit into sales? Because I've seen organizations before where the customer service people go, that's not my job. That's the guys over in sales. They're the ones who have to do that. My job is just to X. How does that play into this?
Right. Oh, you want me to sell now? I'm not busy enough doing customer service. I'm a seller now too. Are you going to pay me for that? How much more are you going to pay me for being a seller? Yeah, every day. You just described my world. In an Outgrow initiative, we involve everybody who faces customers because everybody who faces customers can ask those questions. Did you know we can also help you with this product or that service? 20% of those result in a new line item statistically. So ask about 5 products or services that the customer isn't buying but could buy from you, and one will close for sure. For sure. It's really interesting math. How many people do you have to face customers across all your departments? And if they each asked 5 did you know questions, which takes 30 seconds, how are you in this product? What about that? Did you know we got some of this in? And do you need any of this? And what about this other thing? That's 5 things. One will close. Customer service people can ask, did you know, questions on incoming calls. Technicians, when they are on site, whatever they're technicianing, whether it's furnaces or computers, they can ask, did you knows? And they can ask reverse, did you knows? What else is causing you problems that we can come here and help you with? Or did you know we have a preventative maintenance program where we can fix your issues before they start causing you problems? We will come quarterly. I'll replace all your filters for you in your furnaces so you don't have to remember to do it. And you'll never have a problem again with your filters anyway. You know, I was just with a group of, I have an engineering client that's been with me for 8 years. Most companies start doing Outgrow and they never stop because they keep growing. You know, people are like, how long do you work with us for? I said, how long do you want to grow? That's our answer.
That's a wonderful, that's a wonderful way to reframe that question.
As long as you run Outgrow and people swing the bat, which means ask did you knows and reverse did you knows and make proactive calls and follow up on quotes, do our dozen or so different actions, proactive actions that we have, the great majority of which take 3 seconds, they keep growing. So I was with these engineers and they've been with me for 8 years. It's a company out of the Midwest. They have 3,000 engineers and about 900 of them are involved in our program because they're client facing. The rest of them are sort of back house engineers, you know, back to in-house engineers. And we include the client execs, the project managers. If somebody's on site, we include that person. And, you know, in that world, they call them seller doers. They don't really have salespeople. They have a few salespeople, but not many. They're mostly engineers who sell. And every single one of them starts the day thinking, I didn't become an engineer to be a used car salesman. Thank you very much. Every single one of them. So do accountants, so do lawyers, so do any professional service person, right? And so we have to say, yeah, I have a book called Selling Boldly. And I tell them, and they actually call their program Selling Boldly. I said, they've got this whole thing named wrong. You're not selling boldly, you're helping boldly. And you're helping people who want your help. So that's what we do.
How did you land on this, Alex? Has this been a distillation over your 25 plus years? What was the root of figuring this out? You know, go back to that hotel where you're going, I've got to do something today so I can take care of my family.
It had to be comfortable and natural for me to do, you know, so as I built it for myself, I started applying it for my clients. It had to be something I felt good about doing. I didn't want to be a used car salesperson too. No offense to used car salespeople, right? The world needs many used car salespeople, but I wanted to feel good about my sales work. I knew that, you know, I better figure out how to do it or else we're going to be in trouble. We're already in trouble. Yeah. I built it for myself. And then the how did you get here question becomes a matter of lots and lots of trying things and seeing what works and evolving it constantly, meaning Outgrow clients who are starting the program today are doing a fairly different program than those that started it 5 years ago. They're doing a 12.0 program rather than a 4.0 program version. I'm constantly tinkering. I am constantly improving. There are systems out there where the creator says, openly and actively, this is a 100-year process and it will never change and evolve. And Outgrow will never be that. Outgrow will read the field, see what's working, and we'll keep running the plays that are working. And the plays that aren't working, we're going to get them out of the playbook.
Test and learn, iterate and evolve, and be relentlessly discontented with the status quo, which is growth, right? And growth is painful. That's if you are growing at an organizational level, yes, there's growth in revenue, but growth requires change. And you mentioned earlier the whole change is hard, and it's even harder with, you know, for all the reasons, you know, on the sales side. What are some common objectives that you get or objections that you get from people when they're picking up the phone and calling someone to help them? Like, my perception is, and frankly, I can fall into this myself. So it's like you have to overcome the momentum of the first call. After you make the first one in a day, the next one's easier and the third one's a delight, right? But it's the first one. It's like getting in an ice bath or getting into a cold plunge. It's not the actual getting in that sucks. It's the 10 seconds before you get in that really, really sucks. What do you hear? Am I thinking about it the wrong way? How does that show up in the work you do?
I said just as recently as a day and a half ago when I was in front of that audience, the first call is the hardest one. So if you're only making one call a day, you are only making the hardest possible call that there is to make. You're robbing yourself of the 5th call, which, as you said correctly, is super easy. And the 10th call is even easier than that. If you only do one a day, you are only ever making the hardest possible one. But I'll tell you some other interesting objections that I hear constantly. I'm already doing this. This is just something that I do. Great. Now we're going to log in and track it together. And since you're already doing it, we're going to ask you to help everybody else do it too. Help us help your colleagues do it as well. You'll be a player coach for us. The interesting thing about Outgrow work is we want your customer-facing people to call customers they're not already talking to regularly. So if you think about the customer model, right? 20% of the customers they talk to perhaps quasi-regularly. 80% of the customers, they're not really talking to them very much because they're just on autopilot. They're happy, they're good, they buy what they buy, they order, they get their service, whether it's a service business or a product business, they're sort of on autopilot. And the 20% that they talk to, they're either their biggest and best customers or they're the complaining ones, right? They're the ones that have a problem. When do customers call, Dusty? When they're happy? Hey, great job. That was awesome. Can I pay you some more? People don't call when they're happy. People only call when there's a problem. And so salespeople, customer service people, by definition, customer service people, they only hear from people when something's wrong. Technicians, support. If there's nothing to support, I don't need you. I'm calling somebody else. Believe me, I'm calling somebody else. I'm calling people I do have problems with. They have these 20% that they talk to regularly. Either they're being hollered at by the 20, or they're just the biggest customers that they must spend time with. Then you've got the 80. The 80% might be small customers with you, but they can also be big customers somewhere else. 2 days ago, I had a keynote Monday night as we sit on Thursday doing this. Tuesday, I had an all-day workshop. So at the keynote, I put up a slide sounding like Yoda here. I said, small customers are big customers. Small customers are big customers. They could be spending a little bit with you, but they could be spending millions down the street with somebody else. So the question of, what are you doing with my competition that I can help you with, asked systematically, just uncovers that business, So again, back to your objections question. I'm already doing this. Are you really calling to the 80% of people that you don't talk to regularly? I know you're calling your besties a lot. What about everybody else? I've been doing this a long time. I could see where this could be helpful for the younger people, the newer people, but I don't need this. Well, okay, then let's help the younger people do these things. We're constantly hearing, and owners, if you ask, leaders, if you ask your people to do this, you will also constantly hear these objections. I have a whole chapter in the book, Outgrow, of the objections you will hear and how to overcome them and how to react to them.
It's just human nature, right? We don't like change. We think we're good at something. Comfort is stasis, and we just like to live there. And so, is the juice worth the squeeze? So I have to ask you this, and I'm curious for our audience and who's listening. I'm always thinking about what are the best in the world doing to create success. How do we rip that off and duplicate it, right? That's what R&D stands for, rip off and duplicate. How do we steal a tool from their playbook? What is the greatest success that you've seen with Outgrow from a sales culture enablement, service culture enablement perspective? Think of the most successful company you've ever seen deploy it. And what was the behavior of the leader? Why were they successful? What did the leader of the organization do that set the tone that created success?
It's a great question, and it's a super simple answer. And you already know what the answer is, and they know our listeners know what the answer is. The most successful leaders who grow the most by making this change of Outgrow in their organization, make it clear to everybody that this is important to them. People only do what they think is important to their boss. Nobody cares what the consultant wants. I'm just the consultant, right? Nobody cares what I want. The most successful leaders talk about the importance of proactivity regularly. They're visible. They don't run the program, but they energize the program. You don't have to do the administrative work of the data and we have data, we have action data in Outgrow. We hold weekly huddles every week. So frontline managers hold huddles with their customer facing people, customer service teams, sales teams, inside, outside, and so forth. And then we have managers huddles that precede those, and everything is prescribed and pushed down. Leader, owner, you don't have to do that. CEO, you don't have to do those things. You simply need to tell everybody it's important to you in an email, in a mention when you're speaking to your team, on a Zoom call, give it 30 seconds and compliment somebody, call somebody out. And we have a whole, there's bullet point sort of daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly cadences. There's a schedule, and we will, Outgrow advisors will help you with this. Outgrow advisors are the people who I license and certify and train to do this work with clients. The most successful owners and CEOs make it clear that this is important to them and that it's not an option. It's not something you can choose to do or not choose to do it. If you want to sell here, this is how we're going to sell. We're going to help people. We're going to be proactive. We're going to show up when nothing is wrong. And if you think that is a bad thing, probably there's another place that you'll be happier. It's that kind of conversation. It's all very, very positive and warm and fuzzy, but it's clear that it's not an option.
Give me a story, Alex. Give me a behavior that you saw from a leader. You can change the names to protect the successful. And what is it that they do? Because I know you are paying attention. I know you're watching and learning. And you see somebody do something great in company A, you're gonna test it in the next 10 iterations, and then it becomes part of the playbook. Give me an example or a story where you saw someone lead in that way, and you went, "Wow, that was good."
So every year I run a peer group of my clients. So about 30 people descend onto Lake Forest, Illinois, where I live. Everybody's running Outgrow, all different businesses. There's manufacturers, distributors, service companies, all different sizes. Some are entrepreneurial, $25, $30 million companies from, 10 years ago in my life, but I'm still working with them. I carry a book of about 30 clients at any given time. And some of them are multi-generational family businesses, at 100 million or in the hundreds of millions. And some of them are PE owned, $1 billion, $2 billion and up. And they all come together. So all these different people from all these different backgrounds, all running Outgrow. Everybody knows what a proactive call is. Everybody knows what a did you know question is. We call it DYK. Everybody knows how we do reverse did you knows. What else do you need? And everybody deals with the same challenges of accountability, buy-in, participation. How do we maximize accountability for the longest possible amount of time? Everybody's dealing. So we talk about it. And one leader said, whose company is so wildly successful, he said, everybody shares. I don't really teach much at these events. I just facilitate and they teach each other. People make presentations and share this is how I do Outgrow, and everybody sits and learns. As do I. For me, it's like a laboratory and I love it. And so many advancements have come out of these meetings. I've been, this year coming up will be year 6 of these meetings. Anyway, one of the CEOs at an engineered products, complex capital expense installation business, materials handling company. He said, we are proud in a year, we only miss one huddle, a weekly huddle in a year, only one. Every year we miss one, and it is Christmas week. That's the huddle that we miss. Every other week we have our huddles. Our weekly huddles is what happens at the weekly huddle, Dusty, is the leader prescribes either to their managers, if it's a manager's huddle, or to their frontline people, the frontline manager to the frontline people. They prescribe, this is who we're going to call this week. These are the people we're going to reach out to this week. And these are the products and services and opportunities we're going to talk to them about. And it's like a huddle on the football field. You talk about the play for the week, and then you run to the line of scrimmage and you run your huddle, and you run your play. We have our huddles always, because I know that if we don't, that is when our culture starts to go away. If we miss our huddles, our culture starts to fade away, our culture of proactivity and of helping people. So that's the first story. The second one happened not that long ago. It was a launch work about 90 days into an Outgrow initiative. We, Outgrow advisors, we do a launch workshop with all the customer-facing people. So I'm in a room with about 150 people, and we get to the weekly huddle part. And this is salespeople, customer service people, and managers, right? I lead them through an actual weekly huddle. So we get people together in their teams, and we literally go through it. And then we debrief it. How did it go? What did you learn, right? What did you come up with? Tell me about your conversation. Managers take the microphone and share about their huddle. Then the CEO says, Alex, give me the microphone. So I give it to him. And he stands up. And this is the fourth launch workshop we've done for this company. CEO has been at every single one, leading them like this. But this is the first time he said this thing that he said. He said, the weekly huddles are not to be missed. If the manager is out sick, there needs to be a backup in place to run the huddle. A customer call is not a good reason to miss the weekly huddle. A customer visit is not a good enough reason to miss the weekly huddle. Why? Because that is where the plans for the entire week of customer calls and visits happen. So you don't run the play and skip the huddle. You huddle to talk about the play, and then you go run it. He said 6 times, the weekly huddle is the most important sales activity you are going to do in your week. It is the most important thing you're going to do. And he counted it and I counted it as he said it. And I'm just standing there listening, right? Just like doing everything I can to not bow to the guy because it's so good. I came up to him in the next break and I said, did you know you said that 6 times? And he goes, yeah, I know. I counted too. It was 6 times. So why'd you say it 6 times? He goes, so that there is no doubt, so that they know that this is that important to me. Do you think those people are doing their huddles? Every single one.
Well, it just speaks to, and this is like, we could talk about revenue growth and the system of doing it ad nauseum, and it creates tremendous success. Like I know that, but these principles, these practices that are the secret to making this happen are such core tenets to creating organizational success as a leader. Here is what's most important. Here's what's non-negotiable. Here is what must be done. And then, walking the talk, practicing what you preach. I know that, from some of our conversations earlier, you've shared where, everybody goes out in the halls and the CEO is making the call too. It's like, you've got to live what you believe. And when you do that and do it well, it either attracts the people that believe what you believe or it repels them like a virus. It's just the way things are done around here. And I think that those principles are incredible leadership principles that apply whether you're running sales for an organization, whether you're running operations for an organization. It's that defining what is most important, saying it until you are tired of hearing it and you know that they know how important it is, and then ensuring that you're actually living that behavior yourself, that you are walking the talk. And when it's done and done well with a selling is really service mentality, it just happens to create incredible revenue growth for organizations. And I'm amazed to hear and continually love that it's the application of what could be seen as simple yet difficult things to do, but done with discipline, intentionality, and proactivity. It's just so fundamental. And I think sometimes, especially in today's world where you've got AI this and AI that, we tend to get so wrapped around the axle about complicated things and forget it's the execution of things that are important that creates success. If the football line isn't playing well, they're decoding it back to footwork. Yeah. They're going back to basics. And those basics aren't basic at all. They're just fundamental. Most leaders don't need more advice. They simply need clarity. That's what the Vision to Victory scorecard is all about. It's free, it's fast, and it gives you a clear picture of where you are and what's next. Start now at clarityalignmentexecution.com. Let's make sure that your next step forward is the right one. Who's your greatest mentor in your career, Alex?
I run what we sort of believe to be the largest solo consulting practice that there is. There used to be people bigger than me a long time ago, but I've outgrown them all. There's nobody half the size of my own solo consulting practice. So I've sort of outgrown those folks who used to be ahead of me. The person that I've learned a ton from, who a lot of our Outgrow approaches are based on, is Martin Seligman. I don't have a personal relationship with him, although we've talked, but Martin Seligman, for those who don't know, is the founder of positive psychology, the field, the entire science of positive psychology. Oddly, I studied psychology. I was a pre-med psychology major. Then I went and did a year in clinical psychology doctoral program, which I quit because it wasn't for me. But it's weird that, I studied Seligman in college 30 years ago, and then I've seen him speak like not that long ago. I thought he was older back then, and like now, right? But he's still out speaking, and he's still running the Department of Positive Psychology at the University of Pennsylvania, amazingly, in his 80s. And so positive psychology is the study of what makes us happy and successful, as opposed to the rest of psychology, right? Which is the study of what makes us screwed up. And positive psychology finds that perseverance and resilience is twice as important as talent is to success. So 2/3 of the equation is success, perseverance, and resilience. Don't give up. 1/3 of the equation to success is how good you are, is your talent. And in those years that we were out of money and that it wasn't working, even though I felt like I was doing the right things, but it just wasn't working. Just the act of staying in the arena and staying in business took such an enormous perseverance that it felt like I was just trying to break down the brick wall with my head. I was hitting it so hard. I believe now that perseverance is a superpower in the sales profession. And in fact, it is a superpower for business leaders. One of my favorite quotes in the whole world is by Thomas Edison. And the quote is, "Many of life's failures are people who did not realize how close they were to success when they gave up." If you've already been rejected 8 times by somebody, a 9th rejection is literally the same. It's not one more. It's just the same. What's the difference? You didn't have anything and you still don't have anything. What's the difference? That perseverance solves all sales and revenue problems. And Outgrow is nothing more than proactivity coupled with perseverance, with a bunch of accountability around it, and some data and metrics that we show scorecards of. Those concepts came from Martin Seligman, who I continue to learn from. I continue to read his books. I reread his books. His core finding is that optimism is something you can learn. It's not something that's fixed. It's actually a skill that you can develop. And I would suggest that optimism is a massively important ingredient to revenue growth and sales success. It's hard to sell more when you're pessimistic. Pessimism is only half a step before cynicism. Show me a salesperson who's thriving and growing from year to year, who's pessimistic and cynical. You can't. They might sell a lot, but they're selling a lot flat. They're consistent from year to year. So I know I took a roundabout circuitous path to your mentor.
I love this. I'm a amateur student of psychology and fascinated with human behavior and why people make the decisions and choices they make, and even when they're not in their own best interest, and why they avoid decisions they should make, even though they're in their best interest, just because of some perception of pain. I love this. Optimism is something you can learn. I've long believed, and I tend to be a binary thinker, as a forcing function to distill what is important out of whatever complicated thing is in front of me. And I've long believed this mindset that there's really only two types of people in the world: those to whom the world happens and those who choose to happen to the world. And that perseverance, that mindset of change that you can overcome as a superpower, speaks to that. And then what you're saying is, and you can shift your mindset. Like, the optimism can be learned. You don't have to be a person to whom the world's happened. You can actually choose to change that.
Yeah.
And I think that's an incredibly powerful lesson.
Yeah. Seligman wrote a whole book about it, and it's literally called Learned Optimism. And I think it was in the 90s that this book came out. But it's a seminal work. And so, just to your point, to apply it to growth and revenue, if you're simply proactive with some discipline, if you're consistently proactive, and meaning every day you call a few people who are customers or past customers or prospects when nothing is wrong, say, hey man, how you doing? What you working on that I can help you with? If you just do that, you are rather instantly in the top 15% of all salespeople. Just automatically like that, because 85% are just totally reactive, order takers, as you said. If you can do that with some perseverance layered on top and not give up when they say no, you're in the top 5% of all salespeople. That's how easy it is. Show up when nothing is wrong so they can think about opportunities with you when their hair's not on fire, and try again when they say no. Try a different way. Try a different day. Try a different person. But for God's sake, keep trying. Did you know that the longest, my deal that took the longest to turn into a client? 10 years. It took 10 years. And when we were doing the launch workshop in front of all the staff 2 years ago, the owner and I were standing in front of the room together, and he told that story. He was smiling, and I was laughing, and he was laughing, because he was proud that he made me work for 10 years to sell to him. And I was proud that I got the sale, right? And we were standing there laughing with each other in front of his couple hundred people that were in the room. 10 years it took. And I with some breaks, like, it didn't call on him every month for 10 years, but we had some time off and then try again, and perseverance. If I'd stopped on year 9, I never would have known that year 10 would have been the year to get it done.
My goodness. I'm sure at some point he's 2 years in going, I wish I'd started this 9 years ago, because of now I'm sitting here looking at what I could have missed out on. But to your point, perseverance is so powerful. Alex, I could talk to you for hours. I'm going to switch this to some rapid fire questions before we put a bow on this whole thing. But anyone listening, and I started talking about sales. Like, this conversation isn't about sales or revenue growth, or better said, it's not just about sales or revenue growth. It's about how to effect change in your organization. And oh, by the way, the outcomes of that are differentiated results because of how you show up at a behavioral level, at a system and planning level, at a proactive focus on the customer level. And I think that those lessons apply no matter where someone falls within the confines of the business that they're in or the business that they're leading. There's so many nuggets in here. As you think about books, and you already mentioned one, and so you can't mention that one. I'm going to make you go deeper if you have a different one or had that one on your list. What is one book that you believe every person should read, other than Outgrow, of course?
One book that has had a gigantic impact on my work is by Sean Achor, Achor, and it's called The Happiness Advantage.
Mm-hmm.
And so the Happiness Advantage is sort of like a 21st century next level development of that early work that Seligman did. It's also in the field of positive psychology, right? He's a, kind of 2 generations post Seligman said, for example, that study after study finds that grateful people outperform, out-earn, and out-rise within an organization those who aren't grateful. And interestingly, it is gratitude that leads to success, and not the success that leads to gratitude. Gratitude directly leads to the success itself, as they studied this. Mountain of research on this. That book, The Happiness Advantage, has had a tremendous impact on how I teach sales growth.
I love that book. And I would say if someone would put a gun to my head and say, hey, what's the practice that you've developed over the last 10 or 15 years that you wish you could have given yourself 20, 30, or 40 years ago, it would have been, for me, the practice of a daily gratitude journal. Simply starting every day with what I'm grateful for, because it reframes your mindset.
I have 16-year-old twins, my wife and I, and they're a boy and a girl. When they were little, another book by Seligman called The Optimistic Child. So if anybody's listening that has kids, one of the things they recommend there is exactly what you just said, Dusty, which is every day, right before they go to bed, when you tuck your kids in, make them tell you 3 things either that they're grateful for or 3 good things that happened today. And what you're doing is you're programming them. Even if they're having a fit and they don't want to go to bed and they're really mad and they're screaming, right? They're 5 years old and they're just having a fit. Okay, when this is done, what are 3 things you're grateful for? And what Seligman writes there is that not only builds gratitude, it immunizes your children against depression and anxiety. It builds a wall of defense around depression and anxiety, which is amazing if you really think about it. You're programming their brains to process the world with positivity and gratitude. And we can do that as adults even at yours and my age, and I'm much older than you. We can program our own brains at our age to be grateful and positive.
The brain is a wonderful thing. I think of what a gift. I do that with my kids now, and I think of that gift that you are giving your twins, I'm giving my kids, just to reframe the world and how we show up in the world.
My son, I'll be mad about something that he did something that he shouldn't have done, and I'll sort of, I don't know, I'll be lecturing or I'll be upset about it with him. I'll be angry with him, and he goes, Dad, what are 3 things you're grateful for right now? And I'm like, you jerk. And I can't help but laugh. It's awesome.
You love it when they get to that age and they use your words and wisdom against you, and you're like, son of a gun, they spiked the cannon, and they're smarter than me.
Yeah, it's so great.
Well, Alex, what's a daily practice that you follow religiously that makes you a better leader, a better human, a better consultant? What is a daily practice that you follow without fail?
Every day I make 3 proactive phone calls. Do you know how many 3 calls a day is? It's 720 in a year. If you leave a voice message and send a text, which we teach the scripts for, we know that 2/3 of those people will communicate back to. 2/3 of 720 is something like 480 or 490. That's how many communications I get to have with clients and prospects. Now, I only need 5 or 6 new clients a year. I got 480 communications. Are you kidding me? I could tie my hands behind my back and put a blindfold on and speak a different language and get my 5 or 6 clients. 3 calls a day, every day, first thing in the morning when I'm freshest. Mark Twain said, if you're going to eat a frog, you might as well do it first thing in the morning when you're freshest and you have the most focus and energy. Every day, 3 calls a day. Even when I have a workshop, even when I'm with clients, even when I'm tired, even when I don't feel like it, every day.
Practice what you preach and stay the course, do the work, perseverance. I love that. And it sounds simple when you just decode it to that. 720 is hard. 3 a day, it's not so hard.
Well, on most days, it only takes me 5 minutes because you're leaving voicemails and sending a text. Now you're filling up your calendar. You're adding scheduled calls. The more proactive calls you make, the more calls you put on your calendar. But Dusty, I told you I run a $10 million practice. I run it on 3 calls a day, and it takes me 5 minutes. Nobody's upset I'm calling. Oh, I saw it was you. I wanted to pick up.
What's your personal superpower, Alex? Like when you have an ability, a gift, a unique zone of genius. What's yours?
I'm an immigrant. I was brought here by my parents from Ukraine. And I don't know if this is a superpower or not, but I'll tell you, it's been completely foundational in my life and in what I think in my work, my success. Every single day, I am grateful to be here in this country, because if I wasn't here, I would be there. And my dad's in his 70s, right? I'm about to turn 50. My dad and I would be fighting in Ukraine right now because old men fight both my dad and I would fall under that category, I believe. I would be dodging Russian bombs right now. And every watch I have that has a second time zone on it, I set it to Ukraine time to remind myself of what time it is in the place that I could be at right now. And every single day, regardless, if you're in the US and you're watching this, regardless of what you think of who's in charge, because it changes every 4 years, right? It constantly rotates. It's an unbelievable country to live in. That is why I make my 3 calls every day. As much as I don't want to, it's easier than dodging bombs and missiles. And that's where I would be. And I'm so grateful for this country, and I never forget it. And it's so easy to take for granted. It's so easy to take for granted how good we have it, because now we can surround ourselves with social media and hear no opinion different than ours. We can only make it so we only hear our own opinion, nothing ever different. It's a glorious place to live, and we're all so lucky to be here.
I love that. And I love the intentionality of the time zone, that daily reminder. You can never escape from that thing that you're grateful for. All right, last rapid fire question. And I'm genuinely curious to hear your answer to this. And this is a question I ask every guest, because I'm always curious to hear their answers. When you go home at the end of the day, when you come off of the road or you shut it down, what must have happened during the day for you to say, this was a good day? Today was successful. I was able to really be my best self, whatever it is. What must have happened for you to say today was a good day?
If the day contained some opportunity to connect with my clients or my friends or my family on a personal level. I'm friends with all my clients. As I said, I've had clients, many of them for double-digit years. They did start Outgrow and they don't leave. And so we have drinks together. We talk about our families together. I like cigars. Many of my clients smoke cigars with me, and it's the only time in their year that they'll ever have a cigar, but they do it with me. If I have a chance to just connect on a human level, if I was with a client and we got to, spend 10 minutes and talk about our families and talk about our lives, if my wife and I got to do that over a glass of wine, my wife and I will have our coffee together every morning when I'm home, and we just sit next to each other, and she knits and I'm catching up on things, but we'll talk to each other and connect and talk about the day and talk about the week. Maybe with my kids. Maybe it's with my kids. Maybe it's, just spending even 5 minutes with 16-year-old teenagers, right? Talking about their lives with them, which doesn't happen every day, but on the days that it happens, that's a really good day. And so that's it. And I've learned, I work with a woman here in Outgrow who's on our leadership team, who Dusty, and she takes such joy in simple positives, and they bring her. We have weekly calls, and we often share, personal good, business good at the beginning of those calls. And, she says something like, it was so sunny on our walk today, finally. On our morning walk, it was so sunny, and that's her personal good. I saw these beautiful peonies outside on our walk. So just something that most people wouldn't even notice, that's her personal good. And so she's been a model to me in being grateful for things that are all around us.
Yeah, when you do that and the way you define and describe that, it's hard not to be grateful, and it's hard not to start the next day ready to take on the world. Alex, what's a personal cause or an organization that you are passionate about supporting?
The Cubs, the Bears, the Bulls. No, just kidding. Just kidding. There's a nonprofit here that we support called Elawa Farm, Elawa, Elawa. It's in Lake Forest, and I do many of my business events there to support them. And my wife is on the board of it. And when we do Outgrow training sessions, we call them cohorts. The cost to enter the cohort is a donation to Elawa Farm. What they do is their farm, and they're a nonprofit farm. And mostly what they do is they grow food for people who don't have enough. And I'm a gardener. I love veggie farm gardening, and have a big garden here at the house. And during COVID, I grew a giant pumpkin because it was fun and I had time, and it wasn't anything else to do. We're big fans of Elawa, and and the work that they do and helping sort of food disadvantaged people with food that they grow fresh out of their garden. And they teach people how to garden too, which is really cool.
I love the cause behind it. Even in a country as great as ours, and with all the gifts that we have, there are people who don't have enough. And it's so easy to get wrapped around the axle about what we don't have without really being grateful for what we do and find ways to support those who truly are disadvantaged and yet in many cases are more grateful than we are. And I always find that to be such a different mental shift. People are intrigued and interested in learning more about how they can create an outgrow culture within their organizations. What's the best way for them to get in touch with you, or what's the best way for them to learn more about how to really shift and evolve what they do as an organization and how they show up for their customers?
Yeah. So the answer to the latter part of that question is just to get yourself the book, Outgrow. This has been out for less than a year, so it's brand new. The subtitle to Outgrow is How to Expand Market Share and Outsell Your Competition. And it's based on systems for essentially applying these mindsets and behaviors that we've been talking about today. Outgrow is 2/3 mindset work. In terms of how to get in touch with me, you can go to the Outgrow website, runoutgrow.com, and see about what it entails to work with an Outgrow advisor. You can see our Outgrow advisors. You can see about our process. And if you want to email me, I'm very easy to reach. I'm alex@goldfayn.com. And I'm sure you'll have the spelling of that somewhere by this video. Feel free to reach out directly.
I know our audience would be benefited, and they will increase their own value in how they show up for themselves and others if they do. If they read the book, if they learn about Outgrow, and for those that are brave or courageous enough to email you directly, I think they'll be surprised that they'll get a real response. So, Alex, thank you so much for not just helping us understand what's necessary to grow our businesses, but more importantly, help us understand the power of positive leadership psychology that transcends what we do and really impacts the lives of others so profoundly. So thank you so much for investing time with us today.
Thank you for a great conversation and the thoughtful questions, Dusty. I enjoyed it.
Hey, before you go, if this episode helped you see leadership differently, I have 3 personal requests. First, and this is the most important one, share this with one leader who needs it. Think of someone in your network who's frustrated with their team's execution or is trying to scale their own impact. Copy this episode link right now and text them, hey, I just listened to this episode and I think you'll get real value from it. That simple act of sharing, that is servant leadership in action. Second, subscribe to Leadership Unlocked. Whether you're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or your favorite podcast player, just hit subscribe or the follow button. That way you won't miss the next episode, and it helps us reach more leaders like you. And third, if you're willing, this would be a huge help for us. Leave a 5-star rating and write a quick review. I know it takes 60 seconds of your time, but here's what it does. It helps other leaders discover the show. Every rating, every review, it's how we expand our impact together. So those 3 things, share with a friend, subscribe, leave a review. I'm deeply appreciative, and that would give us so much help. Thanks for being part of the Leadership Unlocked community. Now go create some clarity for others.